Hello and welcome to this interesting and exciting panel that we have arranged today. This is part of a series of informative talks that are focusing on our local communities and our local area here in Northern Utah, specifically at Utah State University. We're connecting to part of larger conversations on social justice and racist policies. And it's my privilege to be the moderator for this panel today. My name is Dr. Christopher Gonzalez. I am Associate Professor of English here at Utah State, and I'm also the Director of the Latinx Cultural Center here at Utah State University. And I'm going to briefly introduce our panelists today, and then we're going to jump right in to talk about some of these issues. So first is Justice Smith. He is Associate AD for Academic Services. Justice, thank you for being here. Waqa Damuni is the Assistant AD and also Director of Student Athlete Development. Thank you, Waqa, for being here. Karen Christensen is a senior student athlete. She is on our track and field team. She's a specialist in the distance events and also an academic All Mountain West recipient. Thank you, Karen, for being here. Amy Crosbie. Amy is Executive Associate AD and Internal Affairs and Senior Woman Administrator. Thank you, Amy, for being here. Andre Grayson is a standout leader and athlete on our USU football team. He's a cornerback. He is also a leader on the Diversity and Inclusion Council that athletics has created. So thank you, Andre, for being here. And we also have, last but not least, we have Jauwan Scaife, who is an assistant coach for our Utah State University women's basketball team. Thank you all for being here. This is being pre-recorded because folks who are involved in athletics have very tight schedules. So we want to I personally want to thank, on behalf of the organizers of these events, thank you for your time and for contributing your voice and your perspective to these issues. So I'd like to begin with an opportunity for the folks who are watching this to get to know you a little bit, but to also hear how perhaps these issues surrounding systemic racism, racist policies, and social justice have affected or personally impacted you. And so we're just going to kind of go around the virtual room here, and I just kind of want to hear from you and see if you might just contribute your take, your personal experience with some of these issues. Waqa, why don't you jump in first?
So my name is Waqa Damuni, as mentioned, and as far as systemic racism, I was born and raised in Hawaii, so I have to be honest. I never really I haven't experienced that that I know of, and as I start to learn more and more of what it is, what systemic racism is, and the I can kind of make my connection to that in small ways. But as far as systemic racism, yeah, I know it exists, and I want to do my part as part of our USU Athletics Diversity and Inclusion Council to address the issue, create awareness, and hopefully rid this our campus and our circle of systemic racism.
Maybe Karen, maybe we could hear from you. What are some personal anecdotes or experiences that you've had that relate or really kind of bring this issue to the front for you?
So I'm kind of similar. I haven't had very many experiences. My family kind of bypassed the system in a way because my dad's white and he grew up in Utah, so that side's had generations to build. And then my mom immigrated here from Jamaica to come to college. So because of that, I'm super grateful because I my family kind of just rose. We bypassed it, but like seeing, and I wasn't very aware of it until I came to college and got to see all my friends on the football team and hear them talk about it. So yeah.
Great, thank you. Justice, let's come to you. What are your thoughts, personal experiences with this issue?
Yeah, so I'm originally from upstate New York. I'm from a place called Amsterdam, and population around now is like around 17,000. But when I was growing up, it was around 22,000. Our city was primarily Caucasian. Your next ethnic group was probably Hispanic, and then your next would be African American. Me personally, I'm Black Puerto Rican. So my biological father, he's African American, and my mother was born in Puerto Rico. She was born in Yauco, Puerto Rico. I was fortunate to be in a very good school system, but growing up, I found myself witnessing, some residential segregation in our city, right? Because we were the only public school in town, all the taxes went to the school, and so we had some good teachers, and we had some blue collar individuals there that were working hard. So our school district was good. Academic, there wasn't an issue, so we had a sound foundation. But as it pertained to the living situations, you would find our large number of Italian-based and Polish-based Caucasian groups living in the good areas. They'd be considered safe, and they'd be living in more acres of land or whatnot. But when you looked at the Black and the Hispanic communities and where they resided, there was always cops around. It wasn't considered safe, and it had a bad rep. So as a young man, I didn't really understand that. I didn't understand why, for me, it was like, why are white people, it seemed to be having a good life, right? And while my family and other ethnic groups, they were just getting by, I couldn't really comprehend that at that time. So there'd be times I'd be hanging out with my friends, and their parents would be working hard, and they come home and they talk about kind of how they're trying to aspire in life or whatnot. And I can remember one of my friends talking about the dad talking about a loan he was trying to get for a house in kind of a nice area, and they wouldn't give him a loan. I mean, he had great credit, was doing the things he was supposed to be doing, was living, working as hard as the next man would be, but he still wasn't getting this opportunity. You can see the frustration on his face. You can see the frustration in that family. And, I just thought, I was like, oh crap, it's just one of those things where I guess it just didn't work out. Whereas you become an adult, and with everything coming up in regards to what's going on in society, I started learning more about redlining, and understanding that there's reasons why there's not prosperous businesses in certain communities, and why there's not enough support and financial backing in certain areas. And so I began to learn that. And so growing up, I've become more aware of it. And it's disheartening only for me, and how it's affected me is because I still got family that are still living in these communities and trying to get out, right? And so for me, I've been blessed to put myself in certain scenarios where I live in good areas, and it's primarily Caucasian, but I live in Providence, Utah right now. It's a great community. The neighbors are outstanding. They're knocking on the door every day, giving us welcoming gifts, and outstanding community. But, to me, driving in that community, personally, me, if we'll be honest, it'd be nice to see other families of color having this opportunity and being in that situation like that, and just being able to be a part of that system, and just seeing this happen in every state that you go to with certain aspects of this systemic racism. And so for me, that's how I've seen it. That's how it's affected me. But that's primarily one of the most things that stuck out to me.
Thank you for that, Justice. And hearing all of you so far, and I haven't really talked about myself because I'm the moderator, but I too am not from Utah. My family for many generations hail from Texas. And so I too have had like a different experience being here in Utah. Andre, why don't we come to you? Let's hear from you about how you've interacted with these at times disturbing issues of systemic racism and how you've dealt with it.
Yeah, so growing up, I didn't necessarily face or understand systemic racism as much as I do now. I'm more learning it now. I'm from Rancho Cucamonga, California, a very diverse city. My community is very diverse, so I didn't see too many racist things, firsthand to me, more within my family, a lot with my dad or with my cousins, getting pulled over and having the car checked for a headlight or something, things like that, just kind of understanding that microaggressions like that, being watched walking around the store, and all those things were kind of things I didn't understand too well, but I knew they were happening. And I would have to get talks from my family, about when I started driving, what I would do when I got pulled over, how to act, how to place my hands, how to all that, So that's when I kind of realized that, this is a real thing. And then, these days I'm seeing it more. I'm understanding what systemic racism is, how it's in education, how it's in healthcare, how it's in businesses, how it's all over the place. It's in our police departments and everything. So I've been blessed to learn a lot and be involved in a lot of things this past year. I know with a lot of things going on in 2020, I can say that's a blessing that I've been able to educate myself and be around you all and help educate each other and make a change.
Well, thank you. I know I'm not the only one who wants to thank you and Karen and other student athletes who, I mean, as I have said before, I mean, you student athletes didn't come here to dismantle systemic racism. I mean, you came here to, learn, to educate yourself, to make yourself better, to put yourself on a path for your career, for your life. And yet many of you younger folks have taken on this burden to try to do something about it. So we are the ones who are blessed by people such as yourself, Karen, and our other student athletes. Jauwan, why don't we come to you? First of all, I think you win the background with that poster. It's amazing. Why don't you give us your take on this?
Yeah, I appreciate it. I think for me, growing up, I grew up in a, kind of like Andre said, I didn't really understand as much as the systemic racism aspect of it. But growing up, I grew up in a small town, but we had certain neighborhoods that we lived in. And the neighborhood I lived in was primarily Black. So that's what I was around for most of my life. And even my school that I went to, elementary school, middle school, was in our neighborhood as well. So it kind of allowed us to be able to be around a lot of people that we knew and we were comfortable with. I didn't experience the racism part. I experienced more as I got older, when I was maybe a younger kid coming up through middle school and high school, where you get out and you start to do more things out in public. And that's when you start to experience people, strangers, calling you different names, and the N-word or thugs, and trying to stereotype you, because for me, I was a Black man coming up. So I think the stereotype was kind of, it was what it was at the time. My father became a cop. He was a detective in Muncie, Indiana. It's like by Indianapolis, Indiana is where I'm from. He was a detective for 13 years. So a lot of times, if I did get pulled over when I was coming up through high school, I would get out of a lot of stuff. But initially, I would get pulled over and they had no idea who I was, and they checked the plates, and then my father was a cop. So I got out a lot of stuff. I didn't really experience the police stuff until I actually got out, went to college, started coaching, and started traveling a little bit. And that's when, like Andre mentioned, I got pulled over numerous times for a license plate light being out, driving left of center, things that don't even really make sense at the time, just to try to search. But I was always taught when you're younger, your father has that conversation about how to drive. And when you get pulled over, the standard protocol in terms of don't touch anything, make sure you have everything out and ready. So I had to experience that as I got older. And that was something that it wasn't like it was tough and it was hard, because it was something that we expected. It was something that we knew would happen at some point. So we had to learn how to have alligator skin and be able to be tough and understand that this stuff happens. And I think now, with everything that's happened now, being able to give a lot of people these voices to be able to speak out, now all this stuff kind of comes back to you, and you're like, man, I can't believe I really did that. And it kind of makes you appreciate it a little bit. But I didn't really understand the systemic part until I actually got out and was able to do some more stuff on my own and kind of look into it and kind of mature myself. But that's kind of how it started for me.
Jauwan, your comments are really insightful, and you know, it strikes me that, you know, many of us here who are of from a historically marginalized group, what I've heard from many of you is, I didn't even really like realize it when I was growing up until like a certain point. And so it makes sense that there are some people who are of the majority group who are white. Why would they think of it? Right? And so now we're having these conversations, and many from that particular demographic are like, well, why is this such a big deal? Or is this really as bad? Right? So it is a kind of insidious thing. Like, it kind of lies in wait, and then for some of us, we experience it, and unfortunately some people experience it once, and you know, it's a tragic event. Maybe they pay for it with their lives. So I wanted to, you know, thank you for that particular comment. Amy, I'd love to hear from you about your interactions and your understandings of this issue.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So just a little background on me. I'm from Central California, which is a pretty diverse agricultural area, farming area. But I have been in Utah for about 20 years or more. And, you know, I think I've been in collegiate athletics for 20 years, and I was a student athlete as well. And so my level of empathy for our student athletes who experience situations of injustice are highly frustrating to me. And I've really appreciated their platform that we've been able to, you know, it's a platform they should have always had and did to an extent, but we've highlighted it more with our Diversity and Inclusion Council, who really brought a really bright, wonderful group of student athletes together. And it takes time to build trust, right? And the other thing I've noticed too, you know, knowing that I'm coming from white privilege, let's just put it out there, I recognize that, I understand it in a new level that I never have before. And how exhausting this topic is to those who have lived it and experienced it and dealt with it their whole lives. So while a lot of, you know, the people on this call have not necessarily minimized their experiences, but said it, you know, maybe I haven't experienced it to as great of a depth. They've experienced it though. They felt it, whether it's been, you know, I don't know all the terms, but you know, I guess they probably felt a lot of microaggressions. And experience those. And, you know, we have a lot of work to do. And I think for me, what I've noticed through this probably last 6, 7, 8 months, which again is frustrating to say because people have been dealing this their whole entire lives and generations and generations. And it's not that it's just come to light to me lately, but just recognizing how important it is to recognize my background, where I come from, my privilege, and the fact that it's time for me and other white people to step up and shoulder the burden alongside our friends. It doesn't mean that, you know, nobody gets to sit out of this, but I think I've realized at a new level that I have some heavy lifting to do and some heavy work to do, and I want to do it right alongside them.
You know, that's a powerful point, Amy. It's something that I've experienced when one of the things that I do in my research is I look at storytelling by non-white groups, non-majority groups. So I look at African American literature, Latino literature, Asian American, Native American literature, and across media. So I'll look at films and comic books and things like that. But my students in the classroom are overwhelmingly white in terms of the demographic. And sometimes when we talk about, for example, I'm teaching a class now, it's on Black masculinities. And, you know, I have students who are not Black and will just say, well, what does this have to do with me? What does the oppression of the Black body have to do with me? And when I pull them aside or I conference with them one-on-one, I say, it has everything to do with you, right? It has to do with all of us. So that point you just made, Amy, is really crucial. It's, you know, you don't like kind of look at the tone of your skin and say, oh, was this my problem or not? No, it is all of our problem because we all participate in the system, right? And we have the power to change the system as well. So, so what I'd like to do now is just kind of move into the specifics of really why all of you are here, which is to talk about this in terms of athletics and sports. So as many of you know, and I'm sure many who are watching this, you know, athletes have had a long history with trying to bring attention to oppression and injustice. We can think, you know, as far back as Jesse Owens, kind of putting the lie to Hitler's idea of, you know, white supremacy. And we also had, you know, we've had Olympians who have kind of protested. John Carlos and Tommy Smith famously raised their black gloved fist and their medals were taken away. Ultimately, they received those again. Of course, Muhammad Ali and Colin Kaepernick. What are your thoughts on the role that sports and athletics has as part of these efforts to do some kind of good to push back and to, as I said before, dismantle like systemic oppression and racial policies? Does anyone have any ideas they'd like to share?
Well, I'll just say I think it's vital, you know, especially when you've seen this over the years, Brad, as you mentioned, with Jesse Owens and Muhammad Ali, you know, 4 years ago with Colin Kaepernick, and, you know, even most recently with the NBA, the WNBA, and even, I think it was NBA Tonight, I could be getting that show wrong, but with Kenny Smith, you know, walking off stage and being in solidarity with the players from the professional leagues. So, you know, I think it is vital that these individuals are part of this. You know, people take notice, right? When you got entertainers and athletes that make news, right? They're a big piece of our fabric. You know, they're a big piece of our lives when it comes to like being in the know. It's the ability to use this platform to bring attention to the things that are making a big statement. You know, something that's so severe and something that's causing such distress that these individuals are willing to give it all up for this cause. I mean, they have the platform to do that. So when you have athletes of this magnitude and having this leverage to do so, I think it's something where now people can educate themselves on what's going on, and they can also inquire about it. You know, for me, once again, it's everything that since George Floyd, I've found myself buried in books, reading articles, doing everything that I can, educating my kids more. And it's been because of certain things that Colin Kaepernick had done within the last 4 years and what's been going on now. So we take notice of these things. I think athletes on this platform have a vital role in this. And I think this is the most we've seen it over the years, which has been a blessing, and it's a beautiful thing. And so, yeah, I think their role is vital.
Thank you for that, Justice. I just wanted to jump in and you know, we were all student athletes at some point, but two of you are currently student athletes right now, Andre and Karen. I wonder what are your thoughts about the role that sports and athletics plays in this national conversation?
I think it's like Justice said, I think it's incredibly vital. I mean, obviously, you know, as athletes, you know, college and professional, we all have platforms. People watch us and they want to hear us. They want to see what we have to say, you know, and I think it's important to take our role serious and playing our part. You know, what the NBA and what the NFL has tried to do with protesting and everything. I think that's important, not only because it brings awareness, but because it shows the problem that you see all these protesting, and when we do it, how many people react and get angry at the fact that we're standing up for ourselves. And so that just brings to light the fact that they love us until we're not doing what they want us to do for them. And that alone is the problem, you know. And you hear with the Colin Kaepernick thing, it's, oh, this country, you know, don't disrespect this country and everything. But what the protest is about is equality. That's it. I mean, that is it. So the rebuttal shouldn't be the country versus equality. That in itself tells you that we have a problem in this country. That if, you know, when we fight for equality, they want to bring up what the flag and what this country was built on and everything. So I think, you know, the awareness part is big because now people have to listen. If they can't see us play, then they're going to have to listen to something until we play again. So, I mean, you know, I think the protesting and the voices is necessary and it's vital.
I think just piggybacking off of what Andre and Justice were saying, I think those things are so important. I think even for what Colin Kaepernick done, one thing that I had to learn was these guys are not only just doing this, they're actually educating themselves as well. You know, Colin Kaepernick, you know, they said he was disrespecting the flag at the beginning, and then he got advice from somebody who fought for our country, and then he gave him the idea of getting down on the knee and kind of representing how to, you know, how can you do both a little bit. And he did that, and he still got, you know, criticized for it. So these NBA guys, you would think with the money that they make, they're not always in the same bubble that other Black people have to deal with at times, but they're taking their time out of their schedule, like Justice said, and giving up some of their stuff to kind of take time and address these issues. So I think it's huge for them to do that. And everybody has had a trigger that has really started. I think for me, you know, being a former college athlete, when you're playing ball and you're in your own little bubble, sometimes it's hard to kind of get a feel for what the world is going through sometimes. You can kind of get lost in the shuffle. But, you know, the Ahmaud Arbery was one for me where it really hit home for me when you got a young kid who's running through a neighborhood and dealing, and that wasn't necessarily a police, you know, deal, but running through a neighborhood and deals with something like that, that hit more home for me in terms of like kind of similar to what I would be doing, you know. So I think everybody has that trigger, and I think them being able to respond appropriately and what these athletes are doing has been amazing, and I respect it as well.
Well, and what society needs to remember is that these are human beings. These are people who have a right to having experiences and having opinions and thoughts, and for them to share it on their platform is an incredible thing. And it's sad to see how polarizing it is to certain people. You know, they take a stance of, well, just play your game and just, you know, I guess in a sense, like Andre was saying, entertain me. I don't need you to share your views. I just want you to go play the sport that, you know, whatever. And it comes down to the fact that we're all human beings with thoughts and feelings. And I think it's incredible when people use their platform for good. And anybody who does that is going to be criticized and praised depending on the person. So
I think for me with the whole situation, and I agree with everyone as far as the platform for high profile athletes. I think as far as athletics, we have a great model as far as student athletes or professionals alike, but with all the differences, their backgrounds, coming from different backgrounds, how they put their differences aside to work and train for one common goal, right? And that's to win. And when they achieve that goal as a whole, regardless of race, religion, or whatever, you know, they have that, that feeling is just, it's a powerful feeling when you can accomplish something as a group, and that develops camaraderie, develops respect among your teammates. And I think, and that's just my opinion, I think we have that athletic model is a great model. And if we could carry that over into society, you know, we'd be able to solve a lot of problems. So that's just my opinion.
Yeah, no, I think everyone is saying, you know, really valuable, important, insightful commentary here. I want to pick up on a couple of things that I heard. You know, you know, Colin Kaepernick was kind of a lightning rod for a lot of people. And it's interesting and ironic now that Roger Goodell, you know, admits that they should have listened to him, but it seems kind of like a hollow comment because Colin Kaepernick is still not playing in the league. And so, you know, we talk about this issue of like protesting. When is a good time to protest, right? I mean, I always heard, well, you know, be respectful, do it in a different way. Well, if Colin Kaepernick took a knee in the locker room at halftime, we wouldn't be talking about this, right? There's a reason why he picked a very prominent moment where everyone is watching and things are quiet. And so, of course, people can twist that and say, well, he's protesting, you know, this nation, or he's protesting the flag, or people who fought for that flag. When you know, he and others have said, well, that's not why, and that's not why he's kneeling. And So the other thing that I heard too is there's this idea of, shut up and play, right? Which is actually, a Fox News commentator you probably know of, named Laura Ingraham, has her own show, very, very kind of far right ideologies that supports the president, our current president, President Trump. And when LeBron James spoke out against some of the things that he criticized of President Trump, Ingram said, shut up and dribble. So it kind of goes to that idea of like, entertain us, right? You're here to do one job, and then we don't want to hear from you as a human being. We don't want to hear about things that concern you. What do you all think about that, and how do you combat that? How do you, what do you say to the person who says, well, you're just an athlete, you're just a coach, you're paid or you're given a scholarship to do this particular thing, don't get political? What do you all say to that? Silent.
Well, yeah.
It's tough, right?
Yeah. So I'll maybe begin and maybe help bring some thoughts to light. So I think here, I think there's just a lack of empathy, right? I think there's a lack of empathy or just realizing how other people have been dealing with their lives every single day as a person of color. And because there's this sense of, this doesn't affect me. Why are you taking my time to be entertained, as you mentioned, Chris? Why are you going on your soapbox and, talking about something you're not getting paid for, where it's the idea of staying in your lane, right? Where in reality, Dre and Karen and all of us that are former student athletes, we're taught from day one, right, to be leaders, to speak out when things are wrong. We're taught that we're in a unique group of individuals that have certain abilities and responsibilities, and that we have to utilize these in the right way. So there's no better place for an individual to do some of this magnitude, to speak out and use this platform, than an athlete, right? When we're upset about something or something we don't feel is going right, we have to utilize this. So if this is going to be a society, an environment, a community of anything where we need to live peacefully and most importantly, equally, there's no better place for this to happen, and I don't want to use the wrong word here, because I don't want it to get taken the wrong way. But, when it comes to protest, no one pays attention to the peaceful protest. As you had mentioned, if Colin did this in the locker room, it wouldn't have been not anything, right? But there needs to be some form of peaceful disruption. People pay notice to disruption, right? They look a certain way, they hear a certain thing. When things are run smoothly, people don't really pay attention. When there's certain disruptions that occur, people take notice. His protest was a peaceful disruption because there needed to be something that was different, out of the ordinary, that was taking place, to have attention brought to what he was fighting for. And I think that's where people misunderstand the idea of like, well, you're just an athlete, just go do your job. No, it's more than that. We're humans. We are responsible as a human to do the right thing, to have integrity, to speak for others. That's what we're taught growing up, right? So it doesn't matter what arena you're in, whether you're in the workplace, whether you're a professional athlete, whether you're in a police force, if you're in politics, it doesn't matter. You need to be doing these processes to help others out and speak upon it. Even when everyone's going to look at you, it might single you out. You might be that only soldier for a little while. But if you stick to it, like Colin did and other individuals have, there will be a movement. But it has to be something where there's a peaceful disruption to bring attention to that. So I think there's no better platform for someone to bring light to this than an athlete themselves.
That's a really key point you bring up, Justice. This idea of disruption, right? Like, you have to change the status quo, which is kind of how we're used to doing business, in order for us to change it. And there's no better way to do that than to disrupt, to make people uncomfortable, right? Which is what we're seeing now. Now, you know, those who don't enjoy the privilege of whiteness, like we're constantly kind of dealing with that kind of, like, you're confronted with it all the time. You don't really have the luxury to say, well, I don't want this to disrupt my enjoyment of the NBA playoffs. Like, right? Like that's an inconvenience for me. I don't want to have to think about that when I watch Inside the NBA. Like, I just want to get my, you know, Charles Barkley and Shaq banter. And that's a kind of privilege, right? It's like I just want to watch this. But on the other hand, these athletes, in many ways, they are celebrities. And when you're a celebrity, you have power, and you have a huge megaphone, right? And but ultimately, they have one vote too, right? So you know, I also find it interesting that it's an idea of disruption, and this is that's what the United States was really founded on, right? This idea of revolution, right? Things are not, you know, as they should be, and we're going to protest. We're going to disrupt tea shipments and things like that. Is really ingrained in part of this nation's history, and yet many people want to pretend like, oh, you should never do that, right? So other thoughts on how we or how all of you deal with this issue of, well, you're just here to participate in sports and bring enjoyment to us. You don't really have like the authority to kind of talk about these things.
Chris, I wanted to go ahead, Coach.
I'll say this really quick. Just thinking, I remember thinking about that when that came out, with that lady telling LeBron to shut up and dribble, and then just hearing the president recently talking about the NBA now has become more of a political party, and it's become more political than actual game. It tells me that these guys have had a lot of time to process and think about this stuff, and I've had a lot of respect for them, because with the way that I grew up, it's one of those things where if that was said to me, I think I would. I've always been taught to just to, you know, you have to have that tough skin, and you got to kind of just let it blow by, because I feel like in situations like that, almost nothing you say is really going to correct them and make them feel like, you know what, I was in the wrong in that situation. And I feel like the more you talk, it becomes one of those things where it just fuels and it makes you even more angry. But these guys have actually had a chance to have action, that actions that are set in place. So when these things happen, they have a plan set in place and how they want to go about these issues that they want to address. So for me, it makes me very uncomfortable to hear, because I don't know what would come out at that moment. So I would probably internalize it quite a bit just until I knew what I wanted to say, just because of how crazy that sounds for somebody to say that about somebody, because just because somebody plays basketball, they're not able to do other things. Like LeBron could be, you know, an expertise in other areas of his life that we don't even know about. But because he plays basketball and we know it, that's what he has to stay in his lane for. So for those guys, I appreciate how they've had this action set in place of what they want to do, because I don't honestly know how I would actually react to those things.
I wanted to just say, with the professional athletes, you hit it on the nail, Chris, when you said they were celebrities, right? They're role models. Society made them role models, right? They didn't, like Charles Barkley came out and said, I don't want to be a role model. Society made them role models. So they're role models, and they're very powerful. These young generations look up to them. And so they have that platform to influence the younger generation, because they're the ones who are gonna honestly make the change. And so they're using their platform to create the awareness, and I think with different issues, social issues. And one in particular was when LeBron James and the rest of the NBA athletes encouraged everyone to come out and vote, register to vote. I think we're going to have a big turnout this upcoming election, and so these professional athletes have that power, and with a lot of power comes a lot of responsibility, and they feel like they need to use that platform to make that make awareness for social change. So.
Karen, I want to come to you. You're one of the younger generation that Wanga is talking about. When you see professional athletes, and your career path still lies ahead of you, and so you see these athletes who have to deal with the kind of hatred that kind of comes at them for speaking out for what seem to be legit causes of the social justice. How do you react to that, and what does that make you think of as an athlete and as a student?
Well, so my first thought when we're talking about this is like the platform that athletes have. I think it's different because it reaches, like, the age groups that it reaches are so different. And like how Wanga was just saying, like, like society made them role models. Like, I would say not even role models for like the younger kids. Like, we like idolize our professional athletes. Like, we watch Kobe highlights, go out and try and reenact his moves, So I'd say, like, when you like see them standing up and stuff, like, I think the younger generation pays attention to that, and that's something that they want to start doing too.
Yeah, it's I mean, I think it goes back to what Wanga said about role models, right? And I'm so glad you brought up the moment that Charles Barkley said, "I'm not a role model," but he knew he was, right? And he's always been a controversial guy, kind of goes his own way, but he's certainly brash and outspoken, right? And I think he kind of helped create a path for more athletes being able to be outspoken. Of course, Muhammad Ali is kind of like the gold standard there, but Charles Barkley also, just ironically, was the guy who said, "I'm not a role model," but he certainly kind of created opportunity for people who are involved in sports at the highest level to feel like they have an obligation to speak out against injustice and causes that they feel very strongly about. So we're kind of getting close to our time here. There's still a couple of things that I want to discuss with you. One of those issues is, these conversations are happening all over the country, all over the world, but really, as it relates to us, it's happening nationwide. But we also know that, what happens here in Logan, Utah, or in northern Utah, or in Utah itself, it's not what's happening in Texas. It's not what's happening in California. It's not what's happening in Michigan or Washington, D.C. I wonder if we can talk about how these issues affect us here locally. Because our state has a very unique demographic. Our part of the state is also very kind of a unique situation, and we all have to, some of us have recently arrived, some of us have been here for many years. What's your sense on how these issues play out in our part of Utah? Amy, can I draw on you first? I think you're one of the ones who said that you've been here for probably about 20 years or so.
Yeah, sure. I think the thing that comes to mind is you've got groups that haven't experienced it for a long, exhaustive period of time. And so I think there's some thought from some that this will pass and we'll get back to, and which is the completely wrong thought. And I feel that as we've been meeting with our student athletes, their biggest focus is action. They're done talking about it. They're done, they're exhausted from talking about it. They want to see action. And not to get us off on a different topic, but that's what I've been so impressed with is they want something tangible. They want to leave their mark. They want to send a message. And so, I remember in our first diversity inclusion council meeting is we talked about how broad our impact could be. And I think we realized that we wanted to focus on our local community, our university community, and then our local community. And so, yeah, our demographic is different. Even from a COVID standpoint, we're experiencing it very different from the rest of the world. But I think the microaggressions are here and they're strong. Inequality is here And so we're not immune. We're probably just not experiencing at the highest level, but some people here are, for sure. And so I think we need to bring light to that. I mean, I've had student athletes express to me, you know, being pulled over in Logan and feeling profiled, even though, you know, the person who pulled them over may swear that they didn't, you know, but they are feeling profiled, the way they were treated. Restaurants, microaggressions there, just small comments alluding to their background and assuming that they know who they are. And so these situations are very real to our student athletes and to our students on campus. And so bringing light to that, I think we don't live in, I mean, it may look like Happy Valley, and it is an incredible place to live and to go to school and do all those types of things. But I feel in our own community, our student athletes are in a, you know, they have some celebrity status. Our student athletes are noticeable around town. They're noticeable on campus. And so again, providing them an avenue and a safe outlet to share and express their feelings, I think is extremely important to change. And I think for me, I want to make sure that we keep this at the forefront. And that was another thing we talked about in our first meeting is this can't go away. This is not going away. It never has, and it probably never will in our lifetime. But what are we going to do about it while we're here and while we have some influence and can do some strong hard work here at Utah State?
Thank you for that, Amy. Co-signed everything you said. I'm right now I'm thinking about something that Andre mentioned earlier, which is coming from a specific part of California that is very diverse, and making the decision to come here to play football. It's no secret that Utah State University is not a very diverse university. We are making strides to try to increase our diversity of our students, of our coaches, our professors, and so on. But the fact is that we have a lot of work to do. So Andre, I'm just kind of wondering, like, what is that like for you, going from where you grew up, which is very diverse, to coming to this part of northern Utah that is not?
Yeah, for me, I think the biggest thing was getting people to learn who I am and how I am and where I've come from, but also learning who they are and where they have come from. A lot of people I know now have lived in Cache Valley or have lived in Utah their whole lives. And I've learned a lot from them, honestly, just from a point of understanding that it's completely different. Things that go on here are completely different. The way I have to act, the way I speak, the people I talk to, it's a completely different ball game out here. And it's been a big difference. California is, overall, as a lot of people know, is diverse, and then coming out here is predominantly white, but Logan specifically, I'm blessed that the people out here are not malicious or overly racist or anything. It's a good community, it's a good place, but there are microaggressions. That's obvious. I get, no matter where I go or what I do, there's a million people staring at me and looking at me, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm different. I know I'm different from what you see around here typically, but just understanding that it is different, that I can take it and be angry at it all the time, or I can learn about it and try and help other people learn about it. So that's been a big thing for me.
Thank you for that. Wanga, you were
for me,
yeah.
I agree with everyone. Cache Valley is an awesome place to live, awesome place to raise a family. Me being a student athlete, a former student athlete at Utah State, I couldn't wait to leave, when I was done. But when I raised my family, when I got married and had kids, I wanted to come back here because I know this is a great place to live. But that being said, there's a lot of what we call implicit bias that exists in the valley, and they don't, and it's a predominantly white valley, and so these guys, a lot of them they're not, they haven't been exposed to other cultures and whatnot. So that's where we come in as a council and try to educate them. Matter of fact, I was contacted by the sheriff's department, and I got a call with them after this meeting, and they want to learn more about that because they feel like that the types of issues that occur, the social injustices that occur around the nation does not occur here in the Valley. And so we got to do our part and educate people so that they can understand and they can see it from a different point of view, you know, because a lot of the student athletes, they mentioned that when they walked into Walmart that, you know, they get looked, you know, people, they get monitored more than say a group of white teenagers coming in. And the other thing, you can go in the community. If this community, if you're African-American, Polynesian, they automatically assume you're a student athlete, you know, coming to Utah State when, quite frankly, there's kids who came here on academic scholarships. And so things like that. I know implicit bias really exists here in the Valley, and I think our council can do a big part in educating people about that issue.
Yeah, Wanga, I think that's the key, right? And probably would all agree with that. It's education. It's spending time getting to know people who are from different backgrounds and different cultures than your own. And that's the benefit of coming from a place that is very diverse. You interact and rub up against all of these cultures all the time. But if you come from a place such as Utah, and if you're white, the chances of you having really substantive interactions with, say, members of the Black community, it's probably just, it's a be kind of a rare thing. So that means that all of the information that you will just passively get about that community comes from news, comes from television, comes from news shows, or comes from film. And so we know that, you know, there's this, and this is now my area, you know, there's this very long and nasty tradition of playing into stereotypes and the kinds of things that we see on television. But that informs people, right? So if all they ever see are, you know, Black men, you know, characterized a certain way, then that's, you kind of like start to absorb that. And so that's that implicit bias that you're talking about. That's that, what I was talking about is just ignorance, you know, which is just, ignorance is simply, you don't know something, right? And we all have like pockets of ignorance. But I think there are some people who are just like willful about it. Like, well, I don't need to know anything about it. I don't want to take the time to learn these things, right? And so as we kind of get to the end here, I kind of want to leave our conversation on a kind of a positive note. I know all of you are involved in efforts. You all have been doing a lot of heavy lifting over the last few months and even longer to do something about systemic racism and injustice. This is an opportunity to really let the viewers know the kinds of things that I know you're all doing, but maybe they don't know, because, you know, athletics is a really wonderful part of our university, but sometimes it's not always easy to kind of see the behind the scenes work that you guys do. So maybe you can just share with everybody some of the things you're doing. You've already mentioned the Diversity and Inclusion Council. Maybe talk a little bit more about that and just other efforts that you all are a part of.
I would love for Dre to share some insight on his experience with football. This has, in a sense, really brought our football team together to have some very challenging and difficult conversations. And then some of the actionable items that they have come up with has been pretty incredible. So I'm going to put you on the spot, Dre, if you're willing to share a little bit about that, and then certainly share about the History 2010 class that's come to light.
Yeah, so our football team has done a lot since the beginning of this year, you know, in regards to racism, stereotypes, social inequalities, and everything. And I mean, dealing with it firsthand, you know, we realized and understood that there's more uneducated people than we thought. And, you know, now we understand that we have to have more talks about it. We have to implement more behaviors that more about equality and more about understanding each other and everything. And it eventually got to the point where talking wasn't enough, action needed to take place. And that's kind of how we led into creating the class, the History 2010 class. Me and a couple of my other teammates and our 2 grad assistant coaches, we, the idea was brought to us by Coach A. And we understood that we needed to take action and we needed to do something that would not just solve a problem for now, but can possibly go on 50 years from now. And so when coming up with the class, we wanted to teach. We wanted it to be education, because granted, there's the people who do not care to learn and do not, they won't. But there are people who are on the border or people who do not know enough. And those are the ones we want to reach. We want them to understand that these efforts, these protests, the anger, the worry is not, we don't want to be doing this. This is not pleasant. We don't, this is not what we want to be doing, but it's here, it's happening, it's necessary to learn about it because it's where we are as a nation, and we felt now was the best time to take action and create the class because especially with the social media era, people are listening. It's out there. There's videos going around. There's conversations going on. So it's better to attack it now while we have the eyes and ears of people and there's interest. I've gotten messages and talks from people that aren't even students at the university that are begging to be able to take the class and to learn something, and I think that's the beauty of it, is that there are people out there that do want to learn and educate and be a part of the change, and those are the people we are trying to reach and just help the community and beyond for years to come. So that's probably the biggest thing as far as efforts that I have personally accomplished with others this year.
So that history course, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dre, it's Untold Truths, the Saga of African American Inequality in the US. And they've worked with Dr. Ross Peterson. So they've had a really good support network, and it's really hard to create a class at an institution and do it as quickly as they were able to do. So very excited about that. And I got goosebumps just reading the course description and then knowing the history. We can call it history now. It's a couple weeks old, couple months old, but just the evolvement of that course. And I do believe it's going to leave an imprint on this campus, and it's going to provide future members of our university community that are from the Black community to be able to learn, and everyone for that matter. Right now it's like a hot commodity. Not everyone can get into that class, but we'll be able to spread the wealth there. I think the other great thing that I've seen that we've always struggled with from athletics is our student athletes are overscheduled. They have tons of stuff going on. So I think that this council is also going to provide us some nice bridges to some incredible things that are going on campus and be able to expose our student athletes who we're extremely proud of and incredible ambassadors of our institution to kind of seep into some of those initiatives that are happening on campus. And that does incredible things for our community as well. So those are some of the many things. And I think there's just tons more to come. My role, I think, is to continue to keep it at the forefront and keep our promises from an administration that we've given to our student athletes in regards to diversity and inequality and combating racism.
Yeah, and this talk that we're having is another yet manifestation of efforts that are underway to educate. And as I said, I'm very privileged to, in my own capacity, to be able to work with all of you. I'm inspired by all the work that you're doing as a former athlete, as a former coach. I've gotten all the feels lately working with all of you. And so what I like to do now is just, in the next minute or two, just if you still have something to say, some final words you'd like to leave our viewers with, this will be the time, and then we can go ahead and wrap up. So Justice, it looks like you had something earlier. I wanted to circle back to you.
Yeah, no, I think Amy and Dre took it all from me, so good job, guys. But I know, just ending with this, I love to see action I love to see leadership, and the thing that put a smile on my face was this course that was created by the football program. You know, football can tend to get a bad stigma about them, about many things, but this was one of those opportunities that they took a hold of. They did something about it. And not only is this going to affect that group, that specific demographic, it's going to affect many others on campus and the university. And so that put a big smile on my face. But leadership roles like that, our Diversity and Inclusion Council, the leadership in that as well, we're taking the steps to improve our environment. We're all here working together to make a better environment for everybody. And once again, as Amy stated before, this is a work in progress, and I'm proud to be a part of this group, and I'm looking forward to see what happens. But we've got great things going on here at Utah State University.
Well said. Other final thoughts? Anybody? Okay, I see some of you saying no, kind of tapped out. And that's the other thing too, right? Talking about these issues, as many of you have been doing since even before the summer protests came up, it's exhausting. It is tiring. And so please understand that from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate all of your efforts, just the fact that you're here, and that your presence is here, and that you are making a difference both in helping change curriculum and adding classes to your own personal networks, which we can't discount. You all each know a lot of people, and you're able to affect change through those networks. And I think we're going to reach many more people thanks to this series of events that we have, that this conversation is a part of. So for all of the organizers that have put these events together, on behalf of them, I want to say thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your efforts. And we know that this is, as all of you said, this is something that it's not going to stop. We're going to keep doing this. That is the challenge that is now before us. And I am so happy that I am here with you as part of this effort to change things for the better. So for all of us who are part of these events, I just wanted to say thank you again, and thank the viewers for tuning in. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Guys.